Welcome to this episode of Sanctum, the Conscious I Life. What is missing? What is missing? Yes, what if there is nothing missing? What if what is missing is the end of a chapter, the beginning of a chapter? Welcome to this episode. My name is Oluwatobiloba, and I am the founder of the Bespoke Private Advisory, where I work with individuals in a one-to-one capacity. Welcome to this episode. In this episode, I'll be talking about the inner architecture of power. This episode is about the fracture. What happens internally that causes fracture and fragmentation when it comes to power, when it comes to leadership. Welcome again to this episode. This is for individuals who carry responsibility, those whose decisions matter, those whose inner state directly affects outcomes, people, and direction. This is not about becoming more driven, it's about becoming more aligned. Power always reveals structure. As capacity increases, as influence expands, as responsibility deepens, whatever is not internally aligned becomes visible, not as chaos, not as collapse, but as strain. This is what tends to happen. If it's not internally aligned, it becomes strain, and then it becomes visible in a way where it is alerting and it is showing that something needs to change. This is often misunderstood. Many capable, accomplished people assume something is wrong when this strain actually appears. But actually, it's not something wrong, it's just showing where focus needs to be placed. In truth, it is a sign of evolution because this is what happens with evolution. Evolution has to happen, it will happen. And when the internal signs are showing fragmentation and fracture, it means that this is where effort and energy needs to be placed to make sure that internal structure is coherent with what is external. The fracture occurs when external power exceeds internal design. So this is where design needs to come into place. You're operating at a level that requires clarity, steadiness, and coherence, but the inner system that supports those qualities have not yet been deliberately structured. So the system compensates for it, and you rely more on effort than alignment. So again, this is when leaders and high performers start to rely more on effort rather than alignment because actually they think more effort or more discipline is needed, but actually that's not what is needed. What is actually necessary in this moment is alignment and an inner architecture that takes everything that is happening and puts it into a coherent system. So people start to move faster than clarity would suggest. You hold more internally than you were designed to carry alone. From the outside, things still function well, or it looks like it's functioning well. From the inside, something feels unsustainable. This is not failure, it's exposure of where focus needs to be and what needs to be upgraded, what needs to be aligned. Why this happens? Most people are taught how to acquire power. Very few are taught how to contain it. Early success rewards speed, intensity, and adaptability. Later stages require something different: integration, regulation, and design. These are all very important. Integration, regulation, and design. Designing the internal system is important with a coherent architecture, which is what I do in the bespoke private advisory, where I work one-on-one with high performers, with leaders, guiding them on this particular understanding of the internal architecture and how that can be upgraded, how that can be maintained, how that can be sustained so that integration, regulation, and design happens and power is not fragmented. When that transition is not made intentionally, inner fragmentation begins to show itself quietly. Decisions take more energy than they should. Confidence exists, but clarity wavers. Achievement continues, yet satisfaction diminishes. This is not emotional instability, it is architectural misalignment, internal architectural misalignment. The limit of discipline. Discipline is useful, very useful, but it also has a limit. Everything has a limit. When we use something too much, then it gets to its limit until it isn't anymore. So when discipline is used, it will get to a point where it isn't used anymore. At higher levels, discipline without alignment becomes force. Force works temporarily and sometimes force is needed, but it creates internal resistance over time. Power held through force costs more energy, more attention, and more control than necessary. Power held through coherence is stable, calm, clean, and efficient. And the difference is design. Like I said, sometimes force is necessary at specific stages. However, power has to be true coherence. It has to be stable so that it can keep expanding, so that it can keep growing, so that it can keep being elevational. So this is the difference in design. The real requirement, the answer is not more strategy. It is more info. It is not more information. It is actually not more effort. It is coherence, alignment between who you are, how you decide, how you regulate pressure, how you hold energy and responsibility. When these are aligned, power feels clean. Power is actually much more cleaner. There's that inner internal integration that you sense that it's not there when it begins to show up, that the misalignment in the internal architecture from all the capacity that is being asked of you to be expanded. When they are not, power feels heavy. This is not a moral issue, it is a structural one. Redefining the moment, the fracture is not a problem to solve, it is a moment of invitation, an invitation to move from operating on capability alone to operating on design internal structure, which is what I do with select clientele in the bespoke private advisory. Those who ignore this moment often add in, they become more controlled. It's like more control is needed, more discipline is needed, more guarded, more internally divided. Those who respond to it redesign. Now, this is what actually is essential to happen is redesign. Their power becomes steadier, quieter, and more enduring. And the power is also more expansive. So when redesign happens, it is focused on the who and what you're doing and where you are in this particular stage of your life, but also for that to be expansive. The orientation of the space is it's really about redesigning. What I'm talking about today in this Sanctum, the conscious eye life, is about redesigning the internal architecture. This is the orientation of this space. It's going from just having all of this different parts internally to integration and actually redesigning it so that it all comes together as a whole. It's all integrated. Sometimes power is stewarded and sometimes power is pushed, not imagined. So sometimes what happens is this all these different aspects, but the reality is that integration is what allows the fragmentation to come together as a whole, especially when it comes to power, when it comes to leadership. Leadership is an inner condition before it is a position. So when there's that internal integration as a whole, then the leadership expresses itself outside in a way where it's coherent with the inside. Evolution is alignment, is refinement, is presence, is longevity, is legacy when it comes to high performance, when it comes to leadership. Nothing here is rush, but nothing is also passive. So there's everybody has a speed because it's bespoke, everybody has a speed at which things happen. Everything here is precise. The fracture is not asking you to work harder. It's asking you to become more internally aligned with what you already carry. In the next episode, we will begin to define the architecture itself, what must be in place for power to move through you without distortion. It's been lovely to share this episode of Sanctum, the Conscious Eye Life, What is Missing. In this episode, I have talked about the inner architecture of power. And in the next episode, I will be talking more about the architecture itself. Have a great day wherever you are in the world.